Okay, getting back on track, we're gonna just put our cranium cap back on today, which is very exciting. So you should be hollowed out. You should do a finger check for thickness by just pinching various spots in your skull and making sure that they're no more than that thick. I mean, a rule of thumb is that anything larger than an inch in thickness, an inch is usually from knuckle to knuckle, will dry slowly and have the potential of blowing up in the kiln. So you want every spot to be thinner than this. Okay, so in order to do to close up the skull, remember I had these crumbs that I let dry out to bone dry. I can tell they're bone dry because they break and crumble real easy. They just crunch them. They've changed color. They're very light in comparison to the wet clay. So I'm going to take a little thing of water, you know, in one of those containers you have. I'm going to put this in. You just need enough water that the water is covering the top of the bone dry clay, and you'll hear it kind of soak in. It doesn't take very long, but maybe in about 15-20 minutes or so you're gonna have a slurry. You can stir your slurry with any tool, right? You want it to be kind of a squishy consistency. So this one I'm doing Martha Stewart, like I already made this one. So it's been previously made, and you can see what it should look like. This has a little extra water, but it just looks like it's slip. It's slap. Slippity slappity slip. So that's ready to go. I'm going to use I'm going to use my rib. I'm going to use this this is called the scoring tool. My sponge, and then I'll need a little bit of extra fresh clay. Okay, so I have the mark where it lines up. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this scoring tool to score deeply and aggressively into both sections that are going to be attached. Now this scoring tool is kind of dainty. This is a good scoring tool for ceramics projects, but for sculpture you might want to use a fork or something deeper. You can even just like use your knife and kind of create some deeper lines in there, which is a good idea. The idea of scoring is you're opening up the clay to let some moisture in, right? Making both the areas moist and ready, and then creating like, sorry. So I'm doing both. I'm doing scoring with this tool and scoring with the little scoring tool. So what I use, it's like you're like creating these little lines so that the water gets in there and this clay gets soft enough. They both get soft enough to marry each other. They like zipper together. So I have it nice and scored, and now I'm going to add some slips. So I just take some of this goopy. You could use your tool and be like, oh, my hands are clean. You could be one of those people. That's very clean and tidy. Do like that. Or you could stick your finger in there and go, go like that, which is my preferred method. I'm gonna add some slip to both areas. I want them both to be absorbing some of the slip and water. Before I put them together. Okay, so then I line up my lines. I put them together. I give myself a nice firm wiggle and push. Right. Wiggle, push. Wiggle, push. If anything's changed shape, I push it back together. I'm going to use my sponge and just kind of wipe off any existing slip, and then I'm going to run my finger around this area where I want them to come together to make sure. Now, you'll still see that there is a line. Okay, nice firm. That's when I take my extra clay. I take my extra clay and I'm going to roll a coil. You can roll on the table, but I just roll on my hands. This maybe takes a little practice. You can roll on the table. Okay, but I don't need it to be really thick. I need it to be, I don't want it to be so thick that I'm adding so much clay but to the surface that's unneeded. So I'm going to just add a small amount of clay to this area, and I'm pushing it like I don't know how it's like I'm inchworming it around that the joint or the place where the line where they came together. Almost like it's the caulking that's going to seal it. Okay, now I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to smush it in one way. And then I'm going to smush it out the other way. Now I'm back together. Yay! I'm gonna smooth and finish all the things I want to finish. I like to do some smoothing with, especially for big areas. I'll take this is the metal rib that came in your kit, and I can take this and run it over the surface and kind of smooth the surface. I like it. You could come, after you smooth the surface is like when you come in, and if you wanted to do details of like that line where the bones of the skull come together when you're like a baby or whatever, after you smooth it, then you come back and add those kind of details. So first I'll smooth with, say, like that, and my finger, come back, and then I'll take a sponge. Now, you have to make sure this is dry to do this step, but I'll take a sponge, I'll get it wet, and then I'll squeeze all the water out of it. So like when I'm squeezing, like there's barely any water in here. And then I'll take that damp sponge and I'll just do just a teeny bit of rubbing on the surface. If I rub too much with water, Then what happens is I bring out the grog or the sand in the clay, and the surface of my clay then becomes not smooth but a rough texture, and you want to avoid that, right? And that's just by adding a lot of water. So you just don't want to add a lot of water. So now is the time where you have, you know, you're gonna take this last steps take a lot of time because you're smoothing and finishing, and it's just about taking your patience and giving yourself the finish that you want. Okay, so you're gonna go through and finish that. You, at this point, your teeth should be hard, so you could come back in with you know, your pointy tools, and your rubber tools will be less effective because the clay has then become harder. But you can come back with your pointy tools and finish any teeth work that you have. I'm going to finish the ones back here because I left them out, right? If I wanted to, I could continue to carve through and create, you know, I could make these opened if I wanted to. I don't want to, but I could if I wanted to. You could carve this area more. You could right, do any of those final steps. So I'm going to just stop talking and do some of it. You can watch me do it, and then I'll stop and I'll come back at the very end when my skull is done and show you a picture of my completed skull. But now it's just time to do all your finishing stuff. Okay, so you can watch me do it for a minute and then take on yourself. You definitely don't want to rub the teeth with a sponge. You will lose all your detail work. Okay? Just FYI. tool. Where's the tool? Oh. Okay, well, I'm going to leave you here and I'll continue to work, but you see how I'm just finishing up details. I've smoothed out a lot of it. Doesn't, like, perfection is not required. But you can see how it's a weird line there. You can see how what a finished will look like. Once it is finished, you want to you don't want to let it dry really quickly. What you do is you don't necessarily have to wrap it in plastic once you've finished all your details. What you do though is you take and you keep the plastic like this over it so that the moisture doesn't go right out of it quickly, but you just kind of drape the plastic over it, and then in a day you'll take the plastic off and let it dry. So you're letting it dry in stages, slow stages. So you go from completely wrapping to draping. In about a day or two, you take the drape off and then you let it dry even more to completely dry. Okay? But once you finish with your refining, I still would work on my teeth a little bit, but and then smooth this side, but I'm pretty happy. You're gonna let it dry, you're gonna take pictures of it and upload those as work progress. Okay? Thank you.